my name is Nimish Mehta, and I have the enviable but easy job of introducing a dear friend and an incredible human being. The job is easy because this conference celebrates entrepreneurship, and we have with us a man who does it better than most. To start, here is a quote from Romesh Wadhwani. As I think about entrepreneurship, I have concluded that there is no higher calling, creative calling, than being an entrepreneur. More than being a painter, more than being a sculptor, more than being a dancer, more than being a singer. And the reason is because entrepreneurs get to create on a very large canvas. Indeed, Romesh Wadhwani paints on very large canvases. But what sets him apart from most other entrepreneurs is that he creates his own canvases. In effect, he marches to his own drum. The one thing you won't find Romesh doing is chasing fads. For those of you that remember the 2000 era when you had the bubble crash, you won't find Romesh doing, participating in those sorts of bubbles. His businesses all create money, create profit, they create value for employees, for shareholders, and of course for customers. Romesh arrived in this country armed with a BTech in EE from IIT Bombay. He went on to earn his MS and PhD in EE from Carnegie Mellon. My wife and I met Romesh when he and his wife Kathy moved to the Bay Area to start a company called Aspect Development. Romesh founded that company and bootstrapped it to several $100 million revenue. The company was extremely profitable. Eventually, Romesh sold that company to i2 for $10 billion, making it one of the largest mergers in enterprise software history. That merger also made Romesh one of the largest individual shareholders in i2, where he served as vice chairman. Now, the very large canvas that Romesh now paints on is his current company, Symphony Technology Group. So Symphony's portfolio of companies boasts around $2.7 billion of combined revenues and employs 17,000 people around the world. Now remember, folks, this is the company that Romesh created from scratch only about a decade ago. The company is unique in its focus, in its approach to building value, just like its founder, Romesh. Now, Romesh isn't merely spectacularly successful as an entrepreneur. He's also a very compassionate human being. He has pledged to give away most of his wealth, and he's a member of the Giving Pledge that was established by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. Now, on a personal story, one of the things that has stuck with me that Romesh had said to me when I met him almost 25 years ago, he said with great pride that he had never worked for anyone and didn't plan to. It seemed to me that he was the master of his own universe, playing the game by his own rules and winning every single time. As I have reflected on my own career, I truly wish that I had internalized that statement more, because there is no greater creative calling or satisfying career than being an entrepreneur, and we have with us a masterful entrepreneur, one of the best there is. With pleasure, I introduce to you Romesh Wadhwani.
Thanks. It's really going to be tough to live up to that advanced billing. This is such a great event, TiEcon, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here and participate in it with you. And I really want to start with a confession. We have 14 companies in Symphony Technology Group, and not a single one of them is like WhatsApp. So none of them is worth $19 billion and only has 60 employees. And regrettably, when I was starting Symphony Technology Group 11 years ago, I made the mistake of asking our CEOs to build real companies with real business models, real revenue, real profits. And I'm still waiting for Facebook to call. So probably not going to happen. So I thought I'd share 5 lessons in entrepreneurship with you as I've gone through my journey of 40 years as an entrepreneur. And the first of these is that entrepreneurship is all about creativity. Entrepreneurs love to create, whether it's products or whether it's business models or companies. And that combination of creativity in finding an opportunity, passion in pursuing it, and tenacity in being able to stick with it even as you go through the ups and downs of business is what distinguishes an entrepreneur. And if you have those qualities in you, as I'm sure most of you do, you're all either entrepreneurs already or destined to be entrepreneurs, because these are the three main qualities. Now, my own experience with entrepreneurship actually began at IIT Bombay. I was in Hostel 2, and we'd come back from class 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock every evening. Dinner was not till 8 p.m., and there was absolutely no opportunity to get Coke or Pepsi or snacks or anything else to tide us over from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And so the idea occurred to me that maybe there was a need for a canteen. And so I set up something called the Canteen Corporation of Hostel 2. And I thought, okay, if I can buy Cokes at Vikhroli, which was the nearest village, and sell them at 3 times that price, somehow all this ought to work out. So I didn't realize it, but I was actually thinking of a monetization model. So what is called monetization today was as simple as marking up cans of Coca-Cola. Then the question was capital. So I went to 9 friends of mine at IIT Bombay, borrowed 10 rupees from each of them, put in 10 rupees of my own, and we capitalized Canteen Corporation with 100 rupees. I didn't realize it, but that was angel capital. So I had 100 rupees of angel capital. Then the question is, how do you serve the needs of the customer? So we hired some, poor guy who had no job at some, minimal pay, and his job was to go to Vikhroli and bring back with him on a push cart, cartons of Coke and cartons of chips and all that stuff. And that was the first experience I had with talent acquisition. So all these big words that you hear today about business models and monetization and, strategy and talent acquisition, all the other cool stuff, unknowingly and without knowing what these words meant or even existed, this is exactly what I was doing at IIT Bombay. To close out that particular story, the Canteen Corporation did incredibly well. We declared a 10,000% dividend in the first year. By the way, it's the largest multiple return I've had in my 40-year career. It's never going to happen again. It's never going to happen again. Every morning I wake up and say, damn, I wish I could do that all over again, just at a larger scale. It's not going to happen again. So guess what? In those days, India was socialistic, and every hostel had a general secretary, and the general secretary election, which was coming up for the next year, had 2 candidates. One of them, by the way, the agenda for the election came down to pro-canteen versus anti-canteen. So I completely dominated the political news at IIT Hostel 2 that particular year. And the anti-canteen guy won on the platform, one point on the platform, that he was going to nationalize the canteen. So he actually won. He nationalized the canteen. Needless to say, service went to hell. Cokes were never there when you needed them. Chips were stale. The guy who used to do all the work disappeared. All kinds of bad stuff happened. Canteen was shut down, and the general secretary was impeached and taken out of office. So right there in a nutshell, going back a long time ago, you have the story of US politics and Indian politics all merged together. So the second lesson I've learned about entrepreneurship is that it's about learning from failure. My belief has always been that inside every failure are the seeds of a future success, so long as you persevere. If you don't persevere, you get nothing, but if you do, there may be something even in a failure. And my brush with failure came with my second company, which I started in Pittsburgh, called American Robot. I was invited to join the company by the Rockefeller family, so obviously very credible, beginnings. I became CEO. I acquired 25% of the company, began building it my own way. And I was taken in by the market hype of robotics. I mean, robots were on every cover of Fortune and Businessweek and every business magazine. And somehow I thought that would all rub off on American Robot, and it didn't. The market was absolutely, completely overhyped. The business model, which was not something I focused on in those days, but I do focus on every day with every company now, was broken because, unbeknownst to me, the Japanese were dumping robots in the US at below their manufacturing cost, even though they were manufacturing in very high volume. I was making specialized high-precision assembly robots in low volume, brilliant technology. We won the Industrial Design Award of 1984. We were the only company in the US exporting robots to Japan and licensing our technology to the Japanese. In every other respect, it was Japanese robots coming into the US. But it didn't really make any difference, because when you have an overhyped market such that the actual market is only 10% of the expected size, and then you have this impossible business model problem. And then you have a disruption in the marketplace because people like General Motors formed joint ventures with Japanese companies. So it took General Motors and other large companies like GE completely out of the market. With the combination of all those, I knew that American Robot was not going to make it as a robot company. And it was an industry in which you were measured by the size of your losses. So Westinghouse owned Unimation. They were losing hundreds of millions of dollars. GE was losing hundreds of millions of dollars. I was losing a pathetic $7 million a year. So in one sense, I was not seen as relevant because my losses were so small. And on the other hand, I also couldn't see a successful business model one way or the other, either to expand the losses or to become profitable. And so finally, I spent the next 8 years transforming the company from a robotics company to a computer-integrated manufacturing software company. And the only reason I spent those 8 years, because it was an absolutely thankless task, was because I had raised $43 million in venture capital, and I wanted to get the VCs out as close to whole as possible. Just a matter of honor and integrity, not an obligation, not a requirement. Venture capital, by definition, is venture capital, but there's more to life than money, and honor is very high up there, and that's why I worked so hard. So what was the outcome? 10 years later, I figured I'd been working 80 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, 4,000 hours a year, 10 years, 40,000 hours. My total outcome was $600,000. All of you are good in math, so you know that that translates to $15 an hour. And that's less than what a plumber used to earn in those days. So the thought certainly went through my mind that I would have been better off as a plumber. And it certainly taught me a new respect for plumbers. What I learned, though, from that experience is that failure, or at least what in Silicon Valley would be considered either failure or non-success, depending on who you are, is in fact the best teacher. And from that, I learned the lesson that markets can be overhyped, and before you do a startup, or before you take a startup to the next level, you better have a pretty good handle on markets, not measured by the cover of Businessweek or Fortune, but measured by what your customers actually say to you. And it's very important that you validate and have a highly likely to succeed business model. And you need to learn to deal with disruption, because more and more disruption happens in every industry. And the ability to deal with it, rise above it, leapfrog it, these are all critical success factors in being an entrepreneur. So I thought I had learned from failure, and it was time to move on and do the next thing. And I was still living in Pittsburgh in those days. So I started a company called Aspect Development. And Aspect was, if not the first, certainly among the first companies that for the first time was going to combine content and analytics on an enterprise software platform. In those days, I wasn't smart enough to call it big data, because if I had, valuations would have been much higher. But it was, in fact, big data related to design and procurement, the front end of the supply chain. Started building the company, and I realized 6 months into it that I wasn't really going to be able to make this a great success in Pittsburgh. And it was a moment of personal reflection for me in terms of what I wanted to do next. I was on 6 boards of directors in Pittsburgh, recognized as sort of a leading entrepreneur. And one day I looked in the mirror and I concluded that, I was the entrepreneur sitting on top of a molehill, not a mountain. And the mountains to climb were really right here in Silicon Valley. And I also felt that the next phase of the journey as an entrepreneur was about renewal. And I thought the only way one could renew myself, was actually to move out here, resign from all 6 boards, and essentially start life all over again, even though, of course, I was now, much older than I was when I first became an entrepreneur. So that's exactly what I did. I moved here, accelerated the development of Aspect Development, showed signs of becoming a very successful company. We took the company public in 1996. Very successful public offering. We offered our stock at $20 a share. It rose immediately in the, within minutes to about $35 a share. And life was good. I came back from New York to Mountain View, where our offices were. And I found that our employees were all in a celebration mood as compared to a work mood. So one of the first things I had to do post-IPO was, in fact, to reset the agenda with our employees and to motivate them and get them to recognize that an IPO is nothing more than the milestone in the journey of a company. It's not an end in itself. It's not a destination. It's just a way station on the way to building a great company. That seemed to work. So we had 10 straight quarters of meeting our public forecasts. I was very proud of that. And then boom, Q1 1999, March 31st, we had 3 huge deals, any one of which was enough to allow us to meet the quarter. All 3 deals didn't get their signatures by midnight. So naturally, early morning, April 1st, 99, a day that lives in infamy, I had to announce that we had missed the quarter. Our stock was sitting at $60 a share. And over a 24-hour period, because stocks were high-flying and missing a quarter was considered to be really, really bad in 99, even now, our stock came down progressively from $60 a share to $6 a share. Needless to say, that causes a massive motivation problem with all your employees who have lots of options and are being recruited by all kinds of other firms in Silicon Valley. And the end result was I spent a lot of my time remotivating our employees, completely reinventing our product line, making it much more web-centric, much more internet-centric, because that's an area in which we had fallen behind. And I remember giving a talk the afternoon of April 1st, a few hours after we announced the miss of the quarter, to our employees in a T-shirt and torn jeans, laying out for them the 3-year plan for the reinvention of the company. And directionally telling them that if we achieved all those different objectives that I had laid out for them, we had a decent chance of bringing the stock back from $6 a share to $100 a share over 3 years. As it turned out, we began to execute on that plan rather quickly. Wall Street got wind of it, and our stock went from $6 April of 99 to $200 in 9 months later, so in January of 2000. And at that point, of course, Sanjeev Sidhu of I2 calls up. He says, I don't know what you've done. The company is on steroids. I got to buy it. And he made an offer at $232 a share. I felt obligated not to say yes immediately. So I said, oh, this is really tough. This is my baby. I've got to think about it. Might need a few days, I might need a few weeks. 3 days later, I called him up. I said, look, you twisted my arm. You can have the company at $232 a share. And so the deal was done at $9.3 billion. I became vice chairman. I had agreed to take my portion of the proceeds in stock. I joined the board. 3 months into the acquisition, it was clear that i2, the parent i2, not the aspect part of it, had serious fundamental internal operational problems which had not been disclosed. And, you know, what do you do in a situation like that? You help to fix it. I told the board members I wanted to actually leave and go start my next company. They said, please don't leave, please help in this process. And I felt honor-bound to help out since I was now part of the company. I stayed for another 18 months, helping with the restructuring, the downsizing of i2, and you know, helping at least stabilize the company before I left. Those 18 months cost me $1 billion because obviously I couldn't sell any of my shares while I was on the board and while I was intimately involved with the operations of the company. So I left $1 billion on the table. In spite of that, I would say it was one of the best experiences of my life because I learned that renewal is a critical aspect of entrepreneurship. You can always start a company, you can always build a company, but times keep changing, technologies keep changing, and the ability to renew yourself as an entrepreneur and renew your company all the time is an incredible success factor in the journey of entrepreneurship. I also learned the importance of motivating a team through good times and bad. And perhaps on the other side of the coin, I learned the very high cost of honor. In this case, honor equals $1 billion. So, but it was a great journey. So after leaving i2, I felt that I had some combination of creativity, passion, tenacity, learned a lot of experiences, and I felt it was time to apply these experiences on a bigger canvas in a very different kind of way. So I started Symphony Technology Group. And the mission of Symphony Technology Group is to build a group of great companies, not necessarily the largest companies, great companies, that are at the intersection of content or big data and analytics and software. And the idea is that by combining these capabilities and applying them to different vertical markets, whether it's healthcare or whether it's consumer packaged goods, whether it's financial services, that there was an opportunity here to build a different kind of group. The notion of group meant that I was actually going to either acquire and transform or start up a number of different companies so that rather than being pegged in only one company at a time, for a change, I could take a view across a large range of companies and then, you know, cross-fertilize between them, share technologies between them, share ideas between them, and yet each company would have its own CEO and its own management team. That journey began in 2002, and where we stand today, the group is 14 companies. It'll do roughly $3 billion in revenue this year. And since I believe in real business models and consistent performance, we've taken this group from where 5 years, 6 years ago, the combined operating profit of the company was zero because we were in some startups, we were in early stages with a number of our companies. This year, we would hope to do over $300 million in operating profit. Clearly not worth $19 billion to Facebook, but for me, it means everything because it means each of the companies that we have in the portfolio is a real company with a real business model, with real revenue, and with real profitability, and is sustainable and will be here many years from now as compared to many other companies that will not be here many years from now. In this journey, obviously, the mission is building great companies, so that begs the question, what is a great company? And I remembered a dinner that I'd had with a guy called Jim Collins. Jim Collins is a very famous author. He wrote a book called Good to Great, 400 pages. And this dinner was about 3 hours long. He spent the first 2 hours and 45 minutes telling me about his definition of good to great. And, there were some interesting ideas there, but I thought a lot of fuzzy thinking. And then he asked me, what do you think is a great company? And I told him, I said, look, I don't have 400 pages worth of material. I just have 4 bullets. And you can put those 4 bullets on half of a PowerPoint slide, and here they are. The first is that you continuously increase the value that you deliver to your customers. There has to be this process of continuous improvement against the goal of improving the value you deliver to customers. The second is the ability to acquire and retain the best talent in your industry or your particular sector. The third is the ability to grow organically through innovation. So making innovation, particularly breakthrough innovation, the centerpiece of your operational agenda. And the fourth is building a high-performance culture, a culture of brilliant execution, a culture of teamwork, a culture of accountability. And I said, that's it. I can't think of anything else. And if you do these 4 things perfectly, and you work at them every day, you, in fact, have a great company. And if you don't, you don't. And so he was actually surprised, and he acknowledged that if he had met me before he wrote the book, he might not have written the book, because how do you sell 4 points on half a PowerPoint slide for $28, right? You can't do it. So, but that's been the philosophy, the guiding philosophy for each of the 14 companies in Symphony Group. Have we achieved greatness in any of the companies? Heck no. To me, that is a journey. Every time we get close on any one of those 4 dimensions, there's this tendency in me to sort of move the bar, sort of change where the goalposts are. And so the end result is none of our companies is, by that definition, great. But I will tell you this, all of our companies are better than good, and somewhere in that journey between good and great, and every day that journey continues and makes it really, really exciting for me. What I've learned from the Symphony experience is that values really do matter. For a long time, I used to think, values are fluffy stuff, focus on something that is much more tangible. But these critical values of, how you deal with your customers, how you deal with your talent, how you deal with innovation, how you create the right kind of culture, these are very, very real and have very tangible outcomes associated with them. Values do matter. The second thing I learned is that innovation is fundamental. When I look back at Symphony Technology Group over 11 years, I now have the ability to see what the different drivers of value creation have been in our portfolio. And, while Symphony is both a holding company and a private equity firm, if we were just a traditional private equity firm, for every $1 we invested, we would have an outcome of maybe $2, because that's the typical performance of a high-performing private equity firms. There are many private equity firms that don't achieve that particular standard. If you look at the Symphony performance, for every $1 that's invested, our outcomes are running at about $4 or $5. So we are among the top few % of private equity firms in the US, but we are small. That's one of the reasons that we're able to do better. But in particular, virtually no other private equity firm focuses on innovation, and we do, and I do every day, and that has made the difference between a 2x outcome versus a 4x outcome or a 5x outcome. It's all about innovation. So try and keep that in your thinking as you are entrepreneurs and as you build your own companies. So you do all this cool stuff, you learn that creativity is important, you learn that, there are lessons in failure, you learn that renewal is really critical in being an entrepreneur, you learn that building great companies is an important part of the journey. This is not just about finding exits. My philosophy has always been that if you build a great company, great outcomes will just happen. Great financial rewards will just happen as a byproduct, but you should not be waking up every morning saying, I'm building my company so I can have an exit to Facebook tomorrow morning. You should be building your company to make it a great company, and then the rewards will come, whether with Facebook or with anyone else. But then when you've done all that, how do you celebrate success? And you can celebrate success as an entrepreneur in a variety of different ways, right? Depending on the scale of success that you've achieved, you can buy a bigger home, you can buy 6 Teslas in 6 different colors, you can do all kinds of, travel, you can travel to Europe, you can sign up to travel to Mars with Elon Musk. If you achieve a high level of success, you can buy a private yacht, you can buy a private plane. At some stage, you really can't spend any more. And that begs the question that we as entrepreneurs, we have the passion, we have the creativity, we have the tenacity. Isn't there some better way in which we can celebrate success? So my journey for the last 10 years while building Symphony Technology Group has also been a journey of applying both the lessons that I've learned as an entrepreneur and the wealth that entrepreneurship has helped me to create in helping other people through philanthropy. Now, just to put some numbers on the table, and most of you are Indian Americans in this audience, in the US, every year, over $300 billion is contributed to philanthropy, 300 billion, in a country of slightly over 300 million people. In India, a country with 4 times as many people, 1.2 billion people, we contribute $5 billion to philanthropy. If that is not absolutely pathetic, if that's not the most negative statement one can make about the successful industrialists and high net worth individuals in India, I don't know what is. So my basic philosophy has been that the best way to celebrate success is to apply the wealth that you create as an entrepreneur and all the other qualities and attributes that make you a successful entrepreneur, apply them to philanthropy. You can apply them in healthcare, you can apply them in education, you can apply them in infrastructure, you can apply them in relief works, you can apply them in jobs creation, but apply them. In my case, I started the Wadhwani Foundation 10 years ago, and our focus is on jobs creation and economic acceleration in the developing countries, starting with India. We built a large entrepreneurship program in India called the National Entrepreneurship Network, which over the last 10 years has introduced entrepreneurship programs in 500 colleges and universities. We teach 100,000 students every year how to become entrepreneurs. We have a mentor network of 5,000 mentors who coach these 100,000 students. We've created an education program to teach faculty members to become faculty members in entrepreneurship. We've created a website, a destination website for entrepreneurs to continue to grow their skills. And so far, 2,000 companies have gotten formed as a result of the work of the National Entrepreneurship Network. But what's more important is it's taken 10 years to get this far. The rate of formation of new companies by alumni of the National Entrepreneurship Network is now 2,000 per year, and it's doubling every year. So, if things go well over the next 10 years, perhaps we'll be able to look back and say 20 or 25,000 companies got started. Each one has an average of 5.6 jobs. By then, it'll be 10 jobs. Each job has an indirect, every direct job has an indirect effect on another 5 or 7 jobs. So when you take those numbers together, it's at least some level of meaningful impact, even in a country as complicated, as diverse, as vast as India. Another important initiative that we have is around skills development. So we are helping to skill nurses, nurses' aides, sales clerks, not because these were the easiest things to do, but because this is where the largest number of jobs is. And our mission over the next 5 to 7 years is to skill 5 million people and then try and place all or most of them in jobs. And if we do that, again, there would be some kind of meaningful impact in the scale of India. So to close, it's a great journey being an entrepreneur. And I speak with some experience, having done this for 40 years. I've tried to share with you these different lessons of entrepreneurship. I haven't given you the average stuff that you hear from most VCs about what it takes to be an entrepreneur. I mean, these are lessons in terms of the entrepreneurial journey from startup all the way to building a great company. But the single most important message I want to leave with you is this. that the reason each of you is here in this room is because you, in fact, have the creativity and passion and tenacity that are the hallmarks of the entrepreneur. Whether you're actually an entrepreneur today or whether you will be an entrepreneur tomorrow, you have these qualities. That's why you're in the room today. I would challenge you, I would ask you to join me in this journey of celebrating your success through philanthropy, not just applying your wealth, but applying your knowledge, your talent, and particularly your creativity and your passion in helping do good for thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of other people. You have it in you, let's go do it. Chalo. So, thank you.